Just comb your hair, go and wash your face. It's been a real long time since you've seen the light of day. So let thoughts come as they may, beauty and parade. Everybody all smiles when you're back in the seat again. On board the Petty Express to a beautiful darkness. It's full steam ahead to ride the rails to our next destination. Yeah!
Hey guys, it's Mo. I am sorry about the earliness, but I just saw that we had like the medical examiner and all of these things going on in the trial today and wanted to try to get it, at least a portion of it done. Let's see here. So we are, I think, going to have a little bit more of this detective, and then we're moving into forensics, I believe. So that's what we'll be doing. It does look like the medical examiner is today. We might not get all the way to that, but we'll try to, be at least somewhat caught up. And yes, middle daughter has an ear infection, so got that squared away. And now I hope that she doesn't get sick anymore and that she's gotten used to the preschool germs. I kind of told her, sweetie, you're just going to be sick. Little kids are, well, they're just germy. They don't mean to be, but they just want to touch and lick everything, and that's what you get.
Get it any further.
We did submit to our fingerprint analysis unit.
Were you able to get any results from that request for fingerprint analysis of that photo?
No, we were not. It was not a value comparison, meaning they were not able to get sufficient detail from the photograph and or the contents of the photograph to be able to make an identification.
Now, at the beginning, when you first arrived to the scene and throughout your investigation, did you ever become aware or of anyone else being injured in this case besides Jermaine Bass, the little boy, or Jayla Bass, the little girl?
No, ma'am. I was not aware of anybody else being injured.
Defense counsel spoke to you about swabbing and sending things off for DNA. Would the results of any swabs or DNA taken from the top mattress that we've discussed in this case help you resolve whether or not the gun going off was an accident?
I don't believe
I'm
so.
going to object to that speculation.
Oh, we're a little past this.
Sustained.
Would any DNA swabs that were taken from the top mattress discussed by defense counsel at the locations decided by defense counsel, would that
He's free to leave the courthouse.
All right, you're still subject to recall. Thank you. Call your next witness.
maybe approach briefly, Judge?
Sure.
Howdy, JKD Buck. Are we doing the morning break? I guess so. Grounds, I know. He is just, his facial expression is bordering on I don't care and defeated. Hey, expert, how are you? Oh, an expert, I did get some Dr. Pepper Peeps. They are awesome. I'm just letting them get stale right now because staleness is how I roll. Are we going to add the sound at any point? Come on, law and crime.
Good morning. If you would please introduce yourself and spell your name for us.
Good morning. My name is Danielle Weinstein, D-A-N-I-E-L-L-E, W-E-I-N-S-T-E-I-N.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weinstein. Ms. Weinstein, where are you employed?
I'm employed by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or FDLE.
And what is the Florida Department of Law Enforcement? Can you explain what that agency is to the jury?
Sure. It is a agency that helps out with criminal investigations. We have a laboratory and an investigative services.
All right. How long have you been working with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
For about 8 years.
All right. What did you do before you started working at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
I was just getting my degrees before then.
Okay, what degree?
Expert, have you ever seen a witness stand that's painted black in the background? This judge has the like tchotchkes from Hobby Lobby, a bunch of Ruth Bader Ginsburg posters, statues of liberty. I mean, it looks like a Hobby Lobby exploded in this joint, except for the witness stand, which is painted black for some reason. I don't know. It is a Florida case, so, Florida.
Did you obtain?
So I went to Cedar Crest College, which was in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where I received my Bachelor of Science in Genetic Engineering with a concentration in Forensic Science, and then I continued to receive my Master of Science in Forensic Science.
At same school?
Yes.
Okay. And after receiving those, did you have any training before starting work with Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
I had training that was given by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
All right. And what does that training involve?
So the training through FDLE takes about 1.5 years. In the first part, I'm doing readings of journal articles and textbooks. I'm working on practice samples, and I'm taking written, oral, and practical exams. And then in the second part, I'm working on casework underneath the supervision of a trained analyst. And the entire thing finishes with an oral board, which I successfully completed. And that means that I am certified by FDLE in forensic serology and DNA analysis.
Do you have a particular title?
I'm a crime laboratory analyst in the biology section.
And what are your duties as a crime laboratory analyst, like on a general basis?
So generally, I'm assigned cases by my supervisor.
JKD Buck, we have been through, let's just say, Bartholomew County. Look, we may never know the origins of Banjo Boy, but it's pretty sure that he crawled out of Indiana somewhere.
And I may do forensic serology testing, so that's testing for body fluids such as blood, semen, and saliva. And then I may forward samples through the DNA analysis process to develop DNA profiles. I can look at any questioned DNA profiles from the evidence, and I can compare any known DNA profiles from known people in the case. I can write reports, and I can come to court on an as-needed basis.
All right, and so you just mentioned some words. Can you explain to the jury what is forensic serology and DNA analysis?
Sure. So forensic serology is the testing of body fluids such as blood, semen, and saliva. And then forensic DNA analysis is the further testing of those cells or body fluids in order to develop DNA profiles. These are all done on items of evidence.
And what are DNA profiles? What does that mean?
A DNA profile essentially looks like peaks on a graph. It is representative of being from human DNA.
I know, I thought it just explained the people I saw at Walmart. It's crazy. JKD Buck, I thought the movie Deliverance was a documentary about my home county until someone told me it was just a movie. Same.
Essentially what DNA profiles are.
Do you belong to any professional organizations?
No, I do not.
Okay. And is the lab work you do accredited?
Yes, it is.
And is the lab itself accredited?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately how many DNA analysis have you done, do you believe, in your career?
Definitely, I've worked on over 800 cases at this point.
Do you have any continuing educational training as part of your job with FDLE?
Yes, we do. We are required to have 16 hours at least of continuing education per year. This involves reading journal articles to keep up with everything that's going on, and watching webinars, and going to conferences as well.
Right. And do you ever take proficiency tests?
Oh Lord, webinars. Yikes. It's weird that I do this for a living, but a webinar would just hurt my soul.
Yes, I do.
What are those?
A proficiency test is a test that, as a DNA analyst, I need to take twice per year. It's essentially a test that's given by an external agency where no one at FDLE knows the answers. I treat it just as if I would, using our normal procedures, working it as if it's evidence. and then I send the results back to the agency, and they grade it on a pass-fail basis.
And have you passed every proficiency test you've been given?
Yes, I have.
And have you ever testified in court as an expert in DNA analysis?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
About 19 times.
Judge, this time I would turn to the witness if you have any questions.
No questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, explain, and you kind of started this a little bit when I was talking about DNA. Now, what is DNA? If you can explain what DNA is to the jurors in terms of, like, for lay people to understand.
Sure. So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid.
I love when he's like, look, can you dumb it down to dumb people level? We've got some short bus riders over here, so if you could just help them out, put it down to like 3rd grade.
Acid. It is the building blocks of all living things that make up everything in the world that's alive. DNA in the human body is within every cell, with the exception of mature red blood cells. You're going to get half of your DNA from your mother and half from your father to make you who you are. Greater than 99% of our DNA is the same from person to person, and less than 1% is different. So it's within that less than 1% where people are going to be unique and where I do my testing. There is the caveat of I would not be able to tell identical twins apart while they would appear to have the same DNA profile.
Even that unique 1% would be the same when you're talking about identical twins.
With my testing, yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And where is DNA? You mentioned on every cell of the body. Like, so where is it found typically?
It is found all over the entire body, every single cell, so in all of the body fluids, in cells in the hands. It's found in the roots of the hair as well.
So like skin cells?
Yes, skin cells as well.
What is the method of DNA testing that you use in your lab?
So we use STR DNA testing.
And what does that mean, those STR testing?
STR stands for short tandem repeats. These are short repeating areas along the DNA. I look at a total of 21 different STR areas, and that's what makes up the DNA profile. As I had mentioned, getting half your DNA from your mother and half from your father, you're going to have one DNA type from each parent at each of those 21 areas. So a DNA profile will contain 2 DNA types at each area for one person.
All right. And how long has STR testing been used?
That's been used for over 30 years, since the 1990s.
All right. Is it generally accepted in the forensic science community?
Yes, it is.
Now, when did you first become involved in the Jermaine Bass case?
I first received evidence back in the beginning of 2022, I believe. Or 2023.
If you need to look at your report
Sorry, yeah.
to refresh your recollection, you can.
The first submission that I received was 10/19/2022.
Okay, so October 19th of 2022 is when you first received a submission.
Yes.
All right. What item in that submission in October of 2022 were you given to analyze?
I was
And I do want to point out that the defense was getting a little snippy, asking when the first submissions and when they started to send things in for testing. And it looks like they sent things in for testing, within a month of this happening. So the defense is kind of being a butthole.
given 4 different items. There were swabs from a magazine base, swabs from the grip and trigger, and swabs from the slide and sights. These are all from a Glock 42 firearm. And then there were also buckle swabs from Jermaine Bass Jr.
And explain to the jury what buckle swabs are.
So buccal swabs are a known DNA swab that's taken from the inside cheek of a person's mouth. I'm given the buccal swabs to use as a known standard for the person, so I'll get a known DNA profile for them.
Okay, so when you get a buccal swab that's identified as being to an individual, you will break down that DNA so that you can form an entire profile to use later to compare to other items. Is that right?
Yes, I can explain our DNA analysis process if
Okay.
you'd like.
Sure, absolutely.
So for the DNA analysis process, I first cut a swab and place it into a tube, and then that goes through the process. There are 4 steps. The first step is called extraction. That's where I'm using chemicals and heat to break open the cells and release the DNA. Then the second step is called quantitation. That's where I'm determining how much DNA, how much human DNA is in each of my samples. And then the third step, that's called amplification, and that's where we use another instrument that is kind of like a photocopier. It's highlighting all of those 21 areas, those STR areas that I want to look at.
I got out of urgent care with middle daughter quicker than I thought I would. So I was like, because it's a long day. They've got the medical examiner and things. Hopefully, we'll get a good chunk of it in. But I was like, while I still have a lot of energy, let's get started early because, goodness gracious, you know, I'm not a night owl, but I want to get a good chunk of this done. Well, she got some antibiotics and some cough medicine, so hopefully that'll make her feel better. And a doctor's note that said she tested positive for, some kind of cold, and an ear infection, so those preschools will get you. But I was so thankful. I was so thankful that the Walgreens had beef stew because that's all she wanted to make her feel better. And all I wanted was to not go to another store. So bless the gods that stock the Walgreens because I didn't have to go to another store. It was a Christmas miracle.
And it's making millions of copies of them. And then the final step is where I'm detecting that DNA. I'm running it on an instrument that's separating out the DNA, and it's translating that information into a DNA profile, which looks like peaks on a graph.
All right. Now, when you receive these items, which you've described as swabs from the magazine base, swabs from grip/trigger, swabs from slide/sights, and the buckle swabs from Jermaine Bass, are each of these items packaged individually?
Yes, they are.
Is there any chance of contamination between any of the items?
Not as far as I know. When I receive each item, and I'm working each item, I only have one item of evidence open at a time, and I clean my lab bench and all my utensils in between each item of evidence as well.
Okay. And you described what type of instrument did you say you use?
We use it for which part?
Just for the analysis part. You were saying you use an instrument that you put them in or something?
Sure, we use a lot of different instruments. So we use the instrument that does our quantitation, it's called a 7500. The instrument that does the amplification step, so making all the copies, that's called a Verity thermal cycler. And then the final step, where I was talking about separating out the DNA and translating that information, that's a 3500 genetic analyzer instrument.
All right, and are these instruments inspected and certified on a regular basis?
Yes, they are.
All right. Now, were you able to develop?
Well, that's more than I can say for my McDonald's ice cream machine. McDonald's, I'm looking at you. You never have it fixed. This is a crime against humanity. I demand ice cream at every McDonald's. President Trump, I expect you to get on that. Executive order now.
Develop a profile for comparison from the buccal swabs of Jermaine Bass Jr.?
Yes, I was.
All right. Did you then attempt to make a comparison with the other swabs that you received in this initial submission, which was
that sounds
submission,
lovely, right?
the first submission you received, correct?
Yes, so I obtained a complete DNA profile from the buccal swabs from Jermaine Bass. So that means there was DNA at all of the 21 areas I was looking at. And then I went on to look at the swabs from the magazine base and the other swabs from the grip and trigger and the slide and sights. And I determined
Well, before you, I'll go through each one individually. Why don't we do that to make it a little easier? So, did you compare the known swab?
KLF, like a menthol urinal cake for the shower. They were going to call them menthol urinal cakes. And then, marketing said probably not. White Rabbit Annie, we don't have Doc in the Box anymore. We don't have family doctors either. Welcome to socialized Canadian medicine, where everything is free if you can find a non-existent doctor, British Columbia, Canada. I am sorry you're going through that. I know there's a lot of parts of the Canadian healthcare system that I am woefully ignorant about, but that is just absolutely ridiculous. And I hope that either the current regime or incoming regime, when you have an election, will make things a little better, I hope.
Or the known DNA of Jermaine Bass Jr. with the swabs from the magazine base of the Glock 42 firearm?
Yes, I did. So prior to my comparison, I will look at the overall DNA profile that I get from the magazine base, and I'll determine a conclusion about it. So what I first determined was that the DNA results I obtained demonstrated the presence of a mixture consistent with 2 donors, including at least 1 male contributor. So then with that mixture, I then compared Jermaine Bass Jr., and he was included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile.
Okay, so he was included, but were you able to make a statistical determination of the likelihood that his DNA was included in that?
So the statistic that I calculated was that the observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jermaine Bass Jr. and one unrelated individual than from two unrelated individuals.
So 700 billion to 1 that he would be one of the included ones, correct? Basically?
No, so the statistic needs to be stated in a very specific way.
Okay.
The observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from Jermaine Bass Jr. and one unrelated individual than from two
I see
unrelated individuals.
those.
All right, and 700 billion, how many people are there on this planet?
So there's probably about 7 billion people on the planet. Our statistic, of course, is not related to the people on the planet, but it is easier to think about how 7 times 100 would give you 700 billion people.
I don't know.
So
Have
it's
you
just
been
kind
to
of
a
a cutoff and
Costco
threshold
on
that
a
we use,
Sunday?
where the actual statistic is greater than that.
All right, so in that particular swab from the magazine base of the Glock, you had determined that it was that he was likely included as a contributor to the DNA on that particular swab, Jermaine Bass Jr.
Jermaine Bass Jr. was included as a possible contributor, yes.
Okay. What about the slide and sights of the firearm, which was the swabs from the slide sights of the Glock 42 firearm? Were you able to make any determination from that particular swab?
For the swabs from the slide and sights, for that result, I got limited DNA results, so that data was not interpretable. This means in this case that there were DNA types in the profile, but there wasn't enough information for me to really determine, is it one person, is it more than one person? So I decided I can do no further interpretation on this. I can't do any comparisons to it.
Okay. So no comparisons really, or nothing you could say about the slide or sights from that particular swab?
It was not interpretable, no.
Okay. What about the grip and the trigger, the swabs from the grip and the trigger? Now, and when you received these submissions, you're titling them swabs from grip and trigger. Did you actually make the swabs?
I did not take the swabs. The swabs were taken by the agency and then sent to me.
Okay, so when you write down swabs from grip/trigger, that's what you were being told was the title of the swab, correct?
Yes, that's what they were labeled as.
Okay. And what did you determine from the swab from the grip and trigger?
For the swabs from the grip and trigger, the DNA results obtained demonstrated the presence of a mixture consistent with 2 donors, including at least 1 male contributor. And then I did my comparison, just like any other sample, where Jermaine Bass Jr. was included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile. And then I continued on to calculate my statistic, which was that the observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jermaine Bass Jr. and 1 unrelated individual than from 2 unrelated individuals.
When you finished these so in other words, basically you included Jermaine Bass Jr. on the grip and trigger as well as the magazine base, but you were unable to get anything from the slider side.
Crochet and crime. Mr. Mo has to bribe me with like a piece of pizza or something like one of those churros to go on a Saturday or Sunday. I would rather poke hot pokers in my eye. And you guys, Walgreens tried to unalive me. Now, I don't know what happened to our local Walgreens. It must have flooded or something, but I had to go in there to get the prescriptions for my daughter and see if they had beef stew. Well, they had 175 gajillion fans going, and the noise and the humming, and I about lost it. I was just like, I am done. I am so done for today. But then I found the beef stew and I was okay. It's the small things. But those fans were about to take me out. I don't know what it is about the sound of a bunch of humming things, but I know.
That's correct.
Correct.
All right. Now, when you are finished with your findings, do you submit a report?
Yes, I do.
Okay. When did you submit the report on these particular findings?
This report was submitted on February 13th, 2023.
All right. Now, after submitting this report, did you receive another submission?
Yes, I did.
And what did you receive?
In the next submission, I received buckle swabs from Shirley Bass.
All right. What was the date of that submission?
The date of my laboratory report, that was...
Or the date was submitted to you?
I'm not sure if I have that number.
May I approach the witness, Judge?
this one. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
My apologies, yes. The evidence was submitted on May 11th, 2023.
Okay. So on May 11th of 2023, what were you given?
I was given buckle swabs from Shirley Bass.
All right, what did you do with that submission?
So I ran the swab through the DNA analysis process, and I obtained a complete DNA profile from those known buckle swabs.
So you obtained from this buccal swab a complete DNA profile of Shirley Bass.
Correct.
Okay. And what did you do with that profile?
So then I compared the profile to the swabs from the magazine base and the swabs from the grip and trigger, those mixtures that I had before.
And were you able to include Shirley Bass as a possible contributor for either one of those areas?
No, I was not.
Okay. So you did not locate the...
Okay, so this is where I think the defense is really going to have a hard time, especially with juries today that have watched CSI and everything else. And again, with me, the fact that the wife's DNA is not on the force multiplier, the fact that the child's DNA is on the force multiplier, the son's, makes me think that he was close enough to touch him, or the son woke up and tried to, fend this off. You can't place Shirley Bass in there, and I think it is crass, it is disgusting, it is wrong to try to blame these children for it. And that looks where the defense is going now, because neither of the children's hands were swabbed for gunshot residue. Again, this is a bit far-fetched. I do not think that they're going to have the evidence to show anything. This is a it's not an accident. Your force multiplier doesn't go off 5 times on accident.
DNA of Shirley Bass on either the grip or the trigger, as well as, or the base of the magazine.
Objection, that's misleading, Judge.
Ask the question again.
Yeah, please.
You were not able to determine or find DNA belonging to Shirley Bass to include her on either one of those submissions.
Specifically for the swabs from the magazine base, when I compared the DNA profile from Shirley Bass to that mixture, there was not enough support for inclusion or exclusion. So no determination could be made to that item. So essentially there were some DNA types of hers present, but the calculation was very low. It gave a very low statistic, which is not very descriptive. It cannot tell me whether or not her DNA may or may not be present in the sample, so I cannot include or exclude her. And then as far as the swabs from the grip and trigger, Shirley Bass was excluded as a contributor, so her DNA types were not present in that mixed DNA profile.
Okay.
And since this looks to be her force multiplier that she carries in her purse, it is not, beyond the stretch of reasonable person that her, DNA would be on the base, because it was being held in, I think, a soft holster and possibly a clip. I don't know. But it's not, inconceivable that on the base of the force multiplier, her DNA would likely be there. What is notable is that it is not on the grip or the trigger guard. So again, the defense is going to have a really hard time trying to put Shirley there.
So she was specifically excluded from the grip and trigger, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And when was this report completed?
This report was completed July 18th, 2023.
Did you, after receiving or after completing this report and submitting it, did you receive another submission on this case?
Yes, I did.
And when did you receive that submission?
I received this, or my lab received it on July 27th, 2023.
And what was that submission?
I received a blood stain card that was represented as being from Jayla Bass.
All right. And were you able to obtain a DNA profile from that submission of Jayla Bass?
Yes, I obtained a complete DNA profile.
All right. And what did you do with that complete DNA profile that you obtained of Jayla Bass?
So I then compared it to those previous mixtures that I had from the evidence.
All right. And what were your results?
For the magazine base, Jayla was included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile, and the statistic I calculated to that was that the observed mixed DNA profile is approximately 25,000 times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jayla Bass and one unrelated individual than from two unrelated individuals.
Okay, so 25,000 versus 700 billion, that's a big difference in the statistical probability, correct?
Yeah, so it's still an inclusion, it's still a higher statistic, but it's not quite to the level of greater than 700 billion.
Okay. What about the grip and trigger? Were you able to obtain, or were you able to make a comparison in that particular case?
Yeah, so for the swabs from the grip and trigger, Jayla Bass was excluded as a contributor to the mixed DNA profile.
So her DNA was, you were not able to find her DNA at all on the grip or trigger?
Her DNA
Mic
types were not
drop.
present.
Okay. And when was this report done?
This report was completed September 13th, 2023.
Did you at any time receive another submission from on this case?
Yes, I did.
And when was that submission received?
This one was received October 26th, 2023.
All right, and what did you receive in that submission?
I received buccal swabs from Jermaine Bass, which I was told was the son.
Okay. Were you able to develop a profile from that submission?
Yes, I developed a complete DNA profile from those buccal swabs.
And were you able to make any comparisons with that known profile?
Yes, I did. I compared it to those previous mixtures.
And what did you find?
For the swabs from the magazine base, Jermaine Bass was included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile. And the statistic I calculated was that the observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jermaine Bass and one unrelated individual than from two unrelated individuals.
Yeah. Go ahead, finish.
And then also compared to the swabs from the grip and trigger, for that one, Jermaine Bass was also included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile. The statistic sounds the same. The observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jermaine Bass and one unrelated individual than from two unrelated individuals.
So in this particular case, and I'm going to go through, so you have on the grip and trigger two potential contributors, and you've now identified both the father and the son as potential or possible inclusion in those two, as the two donors, correct?
For the grip and trigger, I have included both the father and son, yes.
Right. And on the base of the magazine, you indicated two donors, but in this particular case, you've indicated now to the jury that there was the father, the son, and potentially the daughter as well. So that's three donors, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
This-
Which doesn't totally make sense for a mixture of two donors to have three people included to it. But the reasoning for this is because they're all related biologically. So I did go back and do further figuring out who may be actually included.
And what did you determine? Explain that to the jury, what you determined.
Sure. So I had written another report, actually, that was just about doing more statistics to try to figure out who may be included. So I was able to compare combinations of two people. So again, like the reason for all three appearing to be included is because they're all related, they're all sharing DNA, right? A father is going to give half their DNA to the children. So it can look like somebody, when compared individually, is present because their DNA types are present. But in comparing them in combinations of two instead, I'm able to figure out who may be in the profile. So essentially, I did combinations of comparing both Jermaine Bass Jr. and Jayla Bass, and comparison of comparing Jermaine Bass the son and Jayla Bass. And for both of those, when looking at the profiles taken together, and I also calculated statistics to it as well, both of them were not possible to occur together. So the father-daughter together and the two siblings together could not occur together. So when compared together, they were excluded. And then so basically what I was trying to determine is what's the best explanation for this data. So this mixture is best explained if the father, Jermaine Bass Jr., and the son, Jermaine Bass, are included together. So that statistic that I calculated to that inclusion is that the observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jermaine Bass Jr. and Jermaine Bass than if it originated from two unrelated individuals.
All right. So basically, by doing those combinations, it excludes Jayla Bass as being a contributor to this mixture.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, Did you do a test to determine what type of DNA? Meaning, was it touch DNA? Was it from saliva? Was it from blood? Were you able to make? Did you do any of that type of determination with these swabs?
I did not. I'm not able to know what the DNA came from.
Okay. And so we talk about touch DNA. Explain to the jury what touch DNA is.
Sure. So touch DNA is just DNA that comes from the hands, from handling or touching an object or a person.
All right. And would, like, say, perspiration, say you were sweating, could that transfer or go onto a gun? Or go onto any object, basically?
Yes, so touch DNA transfers at any time you're touching an item. So in general, it's going to vary throughout the day, even from with one person. If somebody has recently washed their hands, they're obviously going to have less DNA on their hands. If somebody, say, has recently coughed into their hand, they maybe have some saliva in their hand, and body fluids are going to contain more DNA than just cells from the hand. So they could have more DNA in that case to transfer to an item. Yeah, those are different ways.
How long does it take to touch something and leave DNA?
It really only takes a brief touch, but it just will also depend on whether I can detect it, how like swabs are collected, for instance.
Okay. But it doesn't take much time. In other words, if I were to grab this right here, push that or something, I could leave touch DNA on that particular location.
Yes, you could.
Did you eventually receive a final submission in this case?
Yes, I did.
All right. And do you recall when that submission was?
It was submitted to me on March 7th, 2024.
Okay. And what was that submission in March 7th of 2024?
So this was swabs from a Mandalorian comforter from area number 6 on the comforter.
All right. What did you do with that swab?
So that swab did have red-brown staining on it. So I used a color change test, which gave chemical indications for the presence of blood. And then I continued to send the swab through the DNA analysis process. And I obtained a complete DNA profile consistent with a male individual.
All right. And did you compare that profile with the known profiles you already had done in this case?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to make a match in this particular case?
Yes, for this complete DNA profile from the Mandalorian comforter, this DNA profile matches the DNA profile from Jermaine Bass, so that's the son. And the statistic that I calculated was that the observed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if a sample originated from Jermaine Bass than if it originated from an unrelated individual.
And was the son Jermaine Bass the sole contributor in this? Were there any other donors that you located?
It was just a single source, meaning it came from one person, so Jermaine Bass was the one who matched to it.
All right. Did you receive any other submissions after that submission?
No, I did not.
All right. And did that basically conclude your work on this case as far as what you did in your lab analysis?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Judge, if I could have one moment.
Okay, please don't be the blind.
All right, Your Honor, I will
Please
pass the
don't be
witness.
Sorry. Chris?
Yes, thank you.
And damn it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, Lord, save us all.
Now, you are aware in this case some of the alleged facts, correct?
Yes, I'm given a case summary on the front end when I get every case that comes from the agency.
And that's typical.
Yes.
And you were very careful in terms of the son and the father having the same name.
Yes.
And Jermaine.
This woman has to be sent from Satan to torment me with her tone, her condescension, and her just damn delivery of, well, cahoontiness. Could you read? Did we need to put it in crayon? I'll speak you real slow and in small words so you can understand me. The smug that is rolling off her, I am surprised there are not fumes like San Francisco. Also, again, if we ever need to get like a narco-terrorist out of a cave, just play this woman's voice and they will surrender post-haste. They'll be like, we give up, we love America. We will spread democracy around the world because everyone will want to avoid this woman's voice. I have solved all of our problems. I deserve a Nobel Peace Prize and like a bunch of chocolate.
Jermaine Bass Jr., the swab you got before the other one, would be the father.
Yes, that's correct.
And then the son was just Jermaine Bass.
Yes, that's how the swabs were labeled when they came to me.
Now, it would not be at all unusual for there to be DNA of Jermaine Bass Jr., Mr. Bass, on his own firearm, correct?
Yes, I would expect that.
Wait a minute. I thought you had been portraying or purporting, or at least in shading, that this was Cheryl's or Shirley's force multiplier. Now you're claiming it as his because it has his DNA on it. I'm going to call total bull crap, okay? How dare you? First of all, you have been pushing this and pushing this and pushing this on Shirley, making sure that everyone knows that the force multiplier likely came from a purse of hers, you know, that is where they found the ammunition. There was a soft holster. We have been pushing this Shirley business, and now she's like, you're aware that it is his firearm? Why don't we get to see her face? Because I'm pretty sure it does this. No joke. Good God, she is flippin' flapjacks annoying.
And a lot of times when you have mixtures, not necessarily even the mixtures in this case, there's typically an expected donor that you say, I expect this person to be here, and here's other people in that mix.
In certain cases, we will have an expected donor. It just depends on the facts of the case that I'm given.
But you are confident that you didn't mess anything up. You have the two Jermaine Basses separate for your results.
What
Yes,
is
I'm
wrong with
confident.
this?
I did speak with the agency to verify that I had the correct DNA swabs because I was concerned about the names being the same.
And I looked at your reports, and then I looked at the dates you received your submissions, and I saw pretty much a 3 to 4 month turnaround. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. So you receive the items into FDLE, but they go into an intake first, do they not?
Yes, they do. They go into our secure evidence vault.
They will eventually make their way to you. You work on the item, you furnish your report.
Yes.
And in this situation, we have from submission of items to FDLE before they even get to you, you doing your work, submitting your report, about approximately 3 to 4 months.
Wolfram. This woman can't be this Kahunti on a gummy. There's no way. Unless you're talking about me, and then possibly. But still, there are not enough gummies and vodka and ketamine in the world to make this woman tolerable. She's insufferable. So you're aware that there were two names. Now, are you able to read, or did you get pictures? Now, I see that you have a quick turnaround, so that means they could have submitted every single swab that I wanted them to swabulate. Because you just seem to have a good turnaround. This woman is... I'm going to have to go to confession because I'm thinking a whole lot of bad things. And apparently if you think it, it's just like doing it. Daggone it. I'm going to have to revert back to Catholicism.
Yes, I don't remember specific timing.
You have your reports in front of you if you need to look at them to verify. Would you like to look at them too?
Sure.
And the one that you did the more detailed statistics on, that took a little longer.
Yes, but that was also separate. There wasn't anything submitted at that time.
There you go. Right. Now, did you need to look just to verify that we're talking about 3 to 4 months from submission to reports?
Yes, about, and that is typical. I'm working 20 to 30 cases every single month, so.
All right. And FDLE has policies of limits, correct?
What type of?
Like limits of submission of evidence, I apologize.
Oh, yes, we have an evidence submission policy that agencies must follow with respect to submitting items of evidence.
Okay. And those limits are based per submission.
Yes.
So an agency can submit up to the limit for one submission. They then could do a second submission up to that limit, a third submission up to that limit.
Yes, that's correct.
There's also ways to get exceptions, just to get approval.
Yes, sir.
No. Look, this is not a whodunit. This is not a Agatha Christie case. This is not a Nancy Drew and, God forbid, Nancy Grace case. This is fairly simple. Now, you have the defense saying that he was cleaning his force multiplier about forehead height in his children's room when the force multiplier, possessed by the ghost of Alec Baldwin, went off 5 times and struck his children. Now, if you believe that, I have a for-profit charity. It is called Mo's House, and Mo Goes to Japan. Now, every single bit of your donation goes to Mo. And wouldn't you want Mo to go to Japan? I mean, I mean, this woman is gonna test the very little Jesus in me. Give this heifer a flippin' flapjack Snickers because she's about to enjoy a tapestry of curse words mixed with not curse words that have made curse words in a tapestry of profanity that will make George Carlin proud when I get to 3 hours or 5 minutes from now.
Okay, and is that as easy as a phone call or an email to get the approval to receive, your agency to receive additional items?
Yeah, so it'd be a phone call to the supervisor of the biology section. One of the supervisors will have to give permission to send more items in.
And we're not wasting taxpayer money to do 973 swabs. No. This is, again, there was one person in the house who was holding the force multiplier according to DNA. Now, there is one person who claimed to have used the force multiplier accidentally. This is not a whodunit. We don't need 97 swabs. This woman is beyond flipping annoying. Also, as a taxpayer, I don't want to pay for 170 swabs on a case that we kind of know what happened.
Mr. Terry spoke with you a little just now. Based on what Mr. Terry talked with you about, I determined what you said was 4 known profiles you received throughout this whole case. And you received sets of 4 swabs, sets magazine, grip and trigger, slide and sight, and comforter.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Now, you cannot test.
Come here, sweetheart. Come here. Come close to Mama Mo. Come here. Now, I want you to watch with me. This is how I used to learn words. So it's comforter. It starts with comfort. Comfort is the word, and then you add ear. So comforter. It's talking about comfort, not comforter. Now, perhaps you are familiar with the comforters, so perhaps it's just natural to you. YouTube, don't ding me, and advertisers, honestly, loosen up. You are dealing with Gen Xers now. The boomers are fading out. We like to be a little bit offended. We are a little bit edgy. Please come back to edginess and support your, semi-professional people on the interwebs. Yes.
Testify here today or tell this jury that Shirley Bass did not touch that firearm?
As far as the DNA results that I obtained and what I compared to with Shirley Bass, there was no determination as far as her contribution of DNA to the magazine base. And then for the grip and trigger, she was excluded as a contributor.
Okay, now I know those are your results. What I'm asking you is because somebody has been excluded from DNA, either from.
Wait a minute. What is a sugar griffin? I love closed captions. Blessed be the closed captions, for from them all shenanigans flow. Moisms 127 in Sarcasmus, the book of knowledge. I don't know, I'll write a book someday, or I'll have someone else write it and I'll just tangent off and they'll write whatever I say. Oh my God, that would be a horrible job.
Those are your results. What I'm asking you is because somebody has been excluded from DNA, either from a single source profile or a mixture, that does not mean they didn't touch the item.
It doesn't necessarily mean they've never touched the item. I can only report what my DNA results show at this specific time. I can't tell you what may have occurred at any given time, prior or after, of course.
She wants so badly for her to say, yes, Shirley touched that gun. Here's the problem, defense attorney, that maybe you haven't noticed. So here, I'll use the whiteboard of truth. I'll break it down because you seem to be smugly today, and I'm feeling smugly too. I'm a radiate smugly back. So let me explainarate some things with the whiteboard of truth, the mini whiteboard of truth. Alrighty then. So here is Jermaine Bass, and here is Shirley Bass. He has, what is it? Basically 700 billion people would have to be born to make his DNA again. That is more than 100 times the population of the Earth. Now, Shirley Bass had, I believe, let me look at this. Okay, that's Jayla. I love that I take notes. Look at my fancy dancy notepad too. I feel like a real semi-professional lead person. All right, Shirley Bass. It was less than 25,000. So 25K, which means that this is not as conclusive and it was too low to grade. Okay, so 7 billion is a big number. This is not a big number. Also, there wasn't enough DNA to quantify. With short tandem repeat and the regeneration and the way that they can make little alleles repeat so they can take very small samples and get DNA samples, the DNA that they were able to get from this force multiplier was so low that they could barely quantify it. So yes, the defense is being absolutely obtuse and pedantic, but I don't believe you are going to get this particular forensic person to agree with you. And I love it when they don't.
And I cannot tell you how DNA gets there or when it gets there.
So you're not telling this jury Shirley Bass never touched that firearm that night. You can't, and that's not your job to do that.
Correct.
Okay. When you were looking at the swabs you received,
why ask her?
the swabs from the magazine base, the grip trigger, or the slide, you did not note any red staining, correct?
Correct. I noted that there's a light grayish staining on these swabs.
Which swab is that?
On all of those swabs, from the magazine base, the grip trigger, and the slide and sights.
Because it was not a red substance, was there any need to go any further and do maybe a phenolphthalein test?
So the phenolphthalein test is our test for blood, and no, I did not use it in this case with those 3 swabs.
Did you in fact use it on the Mandalorian Comforter swab?
Yes, I did, because those swabs were a red-brown color, which is typically consistent with what we see with possible blood.
And when I asked you just a little bit ago that you cannot tell this jury that Shirley Bass did not touch that firearm that evening, the same applies to Jayla Bass, correct?
She's
Well, I
not
know what your
going to agree
results are.
with you.
Right, go ahead and look.
Right.
She's not going to agree with you. She just did that. She just told you that she did full comparisons because they're all related. The DNA is so similar that it is really hard to compare. So she went an extra step, and what she just said was that actually Jayla was excluded, but apparently defense lady wasn't paying attention, or at least that's what I understood, and maybe I'm going to look like a moron in a couple seconds. I'm used to it though, and I'm a, professional silly person on the internet, so.
Right, so she was initially included, and then I did my further comparisons where she was excluded from the magazine base, and then from the mixture of the grip and trigger, she was also excluded as a contributor.
After she had been included in the swabs from the magazine.
Yes.
Now, those are your results, and as you said, basically, you get your items, you get your swabs, you have your known profiles. All you can tell us is what those swabs are telling you at that time.
Yes, I just do my
She is
individual
being
comparisons
deliberately
when I get the
obtuse
swabs.
and
So you can't sit
misleading.
here and tell this jury that Jayla Bass didn't touch that firearm that evening.
Yes, she
I
can.
don't have any knowledge of any activities that occur. I can only tell you what my DNA results show.
All right, let's put aside.
Did you hear that sigh? Again, do not mess with semi-autistic women, okay? We will not pay attention. We will be as blunt as, well, look, we will be as blunt because we don't understand humans. We don't get it. And we just tell the truth most of the time, even if it gets us in way big trouble. Now, sometimes we remember we have a filter and we use it and we keep those inside thoughts inside. But when dealing with Kahunti energy, the Kahunti comes back out. And I will be as literal as I possibly can, just to annoy you. Of course, that could also be just me being a butt monkey. I don't know.
The Mandalorian Comforter, that is a single source profile, and that matches Jermaine Bass, the son, and that is item 15.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to kind of put those aside and concentrate on the other two. And then you've already talked with Mr. Terry about the slide on the site. You could not make any determination for anybody on that,
I'm sorry, for what?
for any of the known profiles on the slide or site, which is going to be item 9.
So yes, so for the slide and sites, it was a limited DNA profile. There wasn't enough information in the profile for me to do any further comparisons to it, so it just stopped there.
Okay. So I'm going to concentrate on item 7, the swabs from the magazine, and item 8, and discuss those in a little bit more detail. Now, item 7, the swabs from the magazine base, you have told Mr. Terry that that was a mixture consistent with 2 contributors,
Yes, that is correct.
and you included both Jermaine Bass, the son, and Jermaine Bass Jr., the father.
Yes, I did.
They were both included with the statistic calculated being 700 billion.
Where are you going with this? And I do mean quite literally, where in the hell are you going with this? This was already tread, with the state's attorney. These are absolutely, statistical things. You are not going to get her to change them. So why are you again highlighting that it's only your client's DNA on these things? This woman is, all right, let's just speed through this. I'm going to try to not pause. I mean, if anyone in the chat knows what strategy they are using, please enlighten me, because this might be 4D totally out of my league chess. Or just stupidity. I don't know.
It was greater than 700 billion.
And in fact, 700 billion, isn't that your cap or your cutoff at FDLE?
Yes, that's our cutoff point. It's just used because it's an easier number to think about.
So you could have somebody included in a mixture and it's even more than 700 billion, but you're going to cut it off at that 700 billion.
Well, we were saying it is greater than 700 billion, and I do have the actual statistical numbers in my case file.
Right. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that on the grip and trigger. We'll go through that. All right. So now, did you use star mix with item 7?
Yes, I did.
Please tell the jury what star mix is.
So StarMix is our computer software program. It's essentially a calculator. It helps me separate out the contributors to a mixture, so the people that are in a mixture, and then also helps me calculate my statistics.
Back to item 7, you then make a determination after having a mixture consistent with 2. You have identified both male basses. Now you end up getting a buckle for Jayla Bass, and she's included as well with a statistic of 25,000.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And Mr. Terry had said to you originally you didn't find Shirley's DNA, but you actually couldn't include her, nor could you exclude her.
That is correct. It was too low of a statistic for me to make any determination of whether she could be included or excluded.
So she certainly then cannot be excluded, correct?
She cannot be either included or excluded.
This bitch isn't gonna get
Now,
her
not being
way.
able to make any determination as to Shirley Bass could be from a combo that the information is limited and the fact the parties were related, correct?
Correct. So for that profile, there was a little bit of information missing out of it. It was more low level, a little bit less DNA that was in it. as well as because the mother, of course, would be related to the children with half of her DNA being given to the children. Of course, that would also impact the comparison. It may look like some of her DNA types are in the profile, even if maybe they wouldn't be normally.
Okay. Now, before you did the additional statistics, and you did that at the request of Mr. Terry,
Correct, I did speak with him.
and this is again based, we're talking just about item 7, where now you have a third contributor, correct?
I have two contributors, or I'm sorry, 2 donors to that mixture, where 3 people have been included to it.
Okay. Now, before you did the additional statistics for Mr. Terry, did you discuss this mixture of 2 contributors with your supervisors?
Yes, I did. I discussed with my supervisor and also our technical leader about how to go about using StarMix and using comparisons, obviously like my physical comparison as well, in order to determine who the 2 donors may be in the mixture.
Now, in StarMix, you would have run that sample as a 2-person mixture, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. You could have run it as a 3-person mixture, correct?
If there was any indication that there were 3 people in the mixture, then I would have run it as 3 people in StarMix.
And in
Is this woman mentally deficient? This scientist lady, this lady who works like with beakers and Bill Nye stuff, is telling her that there were dos, not tres, dos contributors, not tres. I need a margarita. I need holy water to pour on this woman to see if she melts.
fact, in your notes, and if you need to refer back to them to refresh your memory, you specifically discussed this with your supervisors.
I don't recall.
Page, oh, sure. With looking at your report and your correspondence, refresh your memory as to your conversations with your supervisor.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Go ahead and look at page 3 of the correspondence and see if that refreshes your memory.
This art-hearted heifer is... Lady Tammy, if I was the witness, I'd be like, A, you understand my answers better if I answered the questions the way
And
you're
you had
asking
indicated
them?
after speaking with them, you noted
yeah,
that,
I would
well, does that
mirror
refresh your
back.
memory, first of all?
Yes, it does.
All right. And you put, I was thinking I want to keep my original conclusion that it's a mixture of 2 and just report the inclusion of the son. Although with the information that they're all related, that could mean it should have been 3. Even without indications of 3, what do you think? And you're talking with your supervisor.
Correct.
You're also advising her that
She's asking a hypothetical question. Again, this is not the sample. The actual daggone swab indicated 2. Not 3, but 2. We have entered the twilight zone, haven't we? This is not real. The Matrix is broken. It must be. It has to be. There is no way this is real. Oh my God, she is the Monday chick from Office Space. Is someone having a case of the Mondays? Now, Milton, pass that cake down.
you had called it and run it as a mixture of 2.
Yes.
All right. And after you spoke with your supervisor, a decision was made not to run it in StarMix as a 3-person mixture.
Yes, I decided that my original decision and conclusion that it was a mixture of 2 donors was accurate, even despite there being 3 people seeming to be included into the mixture.
And there's the capability in StarMix to change the scenarios for the program. In other words,
Okay, I'm going to have to get the whiteboard of truth out because, again, we seem to be having a little bit of a failure to communicate. All right. Now, Miss Brassy Hair. All right. Whiteboard of truth. Okay. You've got Jermaine Jr., and Jayla, okay, all 3 of them. Now, This nice, sweet scientist just said that 99% of all of our DNA is the same, and only 1% is different. But all three of these people are related. So they are even going to have similarities in this 1%, which means that it can appear like someone is actually here when they might not be, because all of the DNA looks so similar. Now, if I, a natural blonde, who is a twice college dropout, can ascertain and computate all of these facts in this time, why can't this woman, why can't this lawyer? I need someone to explain it to me very slowly with crayons.
Run it as a three-person mixture.
I could have run it as a 3-person mixture, but I did not choose to do that in this case because it was consistent with a 2-person mixture.
You could have, but you didn't, right?
Correct, it was not necessary in this case because my original conclusion of being 2 donors was accurate.
Looks like you did have a little bit of question.
And fucking mic drop.
About it as we just reviewed and talked with your supervisor though.
Of course, if
She
3
had a
people are included
question.
into a 2-person mixture, it's going to cause a little confusion. And I'm going to go back and look at that original mixture and verify that my initial thought of it being 2 donors does still make sense.
Now, I wanted to ask you, when you gave Mr. Terry the statistics in this case, and that's like the 1 in 700 billion, and it said unrelated individuals, correct?
So that is how our statistics are set up, yes.
Now, is there any way to develop a statistical analysis for related people?
She
The
just
Starmix
did
does have
that.
that capability, however, we have not validated that at our laboratory.
So it does exist. There is a way to develop statistical analysis from related people, but your FDLE office does not do it.
Correct. The reasoning we have chosen to validate Starmix and use it in this specific way and not use it in comparisons to related people is because it uses census data, and after we would validate it, the census data would already be out of date, so it would actually be a less accurate calculation. It wouldn't be as accurate a calculation or as accurate like the hit ratio, which is our statistic.
So FDLE does not have the StarMix.
No, what she just said is that it is less accurate than the program that we use, because it uses out-of-date census data. By the time they accredited it for their department, the census data would be out of date. So she just explained why they passed on that particular program. You guys, this woman's trying to hurt me in my hippocampus. Indelible on the hippocampus?
Program validated to take related individuals into account.
I am able to, of course, take related individuals into account. I know that people are related in this case, but that has no bearing on the statistical calculation and how it's calculated. It's going to be calculated the same way every time.
Well, all I asked you about StarMix, right? So StarMix is not validated at FDLE to take related individuals into account, correct?
Correct.
Right. This is a little bit different of a case than you usually have, right? Because of the related people?
Yes, you made it a little bit more complicated.
Okay. And in fact, you called it previously, it's a rare kind of case.
Yes, I would say that.
Right. All right. In terms of, and we are still on item 7, swaps from magazine base, where you have included both Jermaine Bass's. I wanted to ask you what the actual statistic you have, and you said you had it in your notes. If it will refresh your memory, please look at it. For the son, Jermaine Bass, what is the actual statistic for item number 7, swabs from magazine base?
Sure. So for the son, the swabs from the magazine base. He was included to 310 trillion.
That was, I'm not very good at math. Is 310 trillion more than 700 billion?
Yes, it is, which is why we state our statistic as greater than 700.
They're gonna blame the sun. And I am going to weave such an impressive cloud of absolute bitch fire that it will be epic. Guinness World Record. People will come for miles.
Okay, your kind of cap that you put in.
Yes.
On FDLE, okay. All right. Now, item 8 then, finally, again, that's the swab from the grip and trigger, correct?
Yes.
It's going to kind of be a little bit consistent with the fact that it's a mixture consistent with 2 donors, according to you, and you have included both Jermaine Basses, the son and Jermaine Bass Jr.
Yes, both were included as possible contributors.
And the statistical analysis for both of the Bass males is that greater than 700 billion.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, specifically on item 8, though, you were able to exclude Shirley Bass, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes,
That is
on the
different from
trigger.
item number 7, where you couldn't include or exclude her.
That is correct, and that's because
DNA
the
was
swabs from the magazine-based that mixture had a little bit less information in it, whereas for the swabs from the grip and trigger, there was a lot more information, nearly complete information at all of the 21 areas.
And for item 8, Shirley being excluded, that does not mean she did not touch that item, correct?
I cannot determine what activities may have occurred.
Yeah. Same thing with Jayla Bass. She is excluded, correct, from item 8?
Correct.
Okay. You cannot say she did not touch that firearm, correct?
I cannot tell you what activities may have occurred, only what my DNA results show.
Exactly. You can only testify to the DNA results that were found.
Congratulations, you figured out her purpose for being here. Why the hell are you asking her these questions? I get what you're trying to get across, but you are doing it in a ham-fisted and cahoonty way that is guaranteed to irritate everyone but maybe your best friend or your imaginary friend. Of course, my favorite imaginary friend is Drop Dead Fred, and I swear to God, Hollywood, keep your grubby hands off of Drop Dead Fred.
That is correct.
Now, in terms of the son, Jermaine Bass, could you give us the statistical analysis now for the grip and trigger, item 8?
Sure, so the number calculated for item 8 was he was included to 640 quintillion.
How many zeros are in quintillion?
So 1 quintillion has 20 zeros.
20 zeros?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So it is way above the cap that FDLE uses, greater than 700 billion.
Yes, it is.
White Rabbit Annie, this does look cynical and it looks like where they're going. Again, they cannot place Shirley there. Even if you claim that she wore gloves and everything else, it still does not explain how there is only the dad's DNA and the son's DNA. And it does seem cynical, but this does seem like their strategy. It did seem like they were hopping back and forth between strategies, probably because the fact patterns in this case are terrible for them. But if they are asserting this, I do think he is going to have to testify. He's going to have to throw his son under the bus in front of the entire world. And because there is no way that they're going to be able to sell this theory unless he gets up and testifies.
Okay. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Weinstein. Did I say that?
Weinstein.
Weinstein. Thank you.
Anything else from the state?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you can step down, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
She released from her subpoena?
Yes, Your Honor.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll go ahead and take our lunch break. Same admonitions. I will see you back here at, well,
Wow, that's a pretty good lunch break.
PowerPoints to assist in the presentation.
Okay.
It's loaded in here. I'm going to go along with it. I think we can go.
And what's the change? Bring them in as soon as they're
That's
ready.
kind of what we stopped at the call.
okay.
Bring them in as soon as they're ready.
And Judge, just so the court's aware, this next witness has prepared a couple PowerPoints to assist in the presentation.
Okay.
It's loaded in here. I'm going to go along with it, and at my part of my presentation, go would be following through here. When we're done, we have agreed with the defense that we are going to take the thumb drive and provide it to the clerk as a court exhibit, not to go back to the jury, but just as a court exhibit.
Okay, fine. witness.
Judge, before we proceed, we would ask if the court could read that stipulation.
Sure. I have a stipulation between the parties. The stipulation is a fact that the parties have agreed among themselves to be true, facts to have been proven to be true. So in this case, it's stipulated to additional DNA results. And the state and the defendant, Jermaine Bass, stipulate to the following additional DNA results. Pure Gold Forensics conducted additional DNA testing in this case with the following results. HCSO item 96112, number 36, swab from the ladder, labeled GSM-L by CSI Bader, is a single-source male profile belonging to Jermaine Bass, JJ, the son. Jayla Bass is excluded from the DNA profile from this item. HCSO number 96112, number 37, swab from the ledge, labeled GSM-M by CSI Bader, is a single-source male profile belonging to Jermaine Bass, JJ, the son. Jayla Bass is excluded from the DNA profile for this item. HCSO item 96112, number 38, swab from the ledge, labeled GSM-N by CSI Bader, is a single-source male DNA profile belonging to Jermaine Bass, JJ, the son. Jayla Bass is excluded from the DNA profile for this item. HCSO item 96112, number 39, swab top the bed, labeled GSM-O by CSI Bader, is a single-source male DNA profile belonging to Jermaine Bass, JJ, the son. Jayla Bass is excluded from the DNA profile from this item. HCSO item 96112, number 40, swab wall top, labeled GSM-P by CSI Bader, is a mixture of at least 2 contributors. In terms of Jermaine Bass, JJ, the son, there is a limited support for inclusion in the DNA mixture. In the terms of Jayla Bass, there is a very strong support for inclusion in the DNA mixture. HCSO item number 96112, number 41, swall wob bottom, labeled GSM-Q by CSI Bader, is a single-source female DNA profile belonging to Jayla Bass. Jermaine Bass, JJ, the son, is excluded from the DNA profile for this item. HCSO item 96112, number 42, swab wall bottom, labeled GSM-R by CSI Bader, is a mixture of at least 2 contributors. In terms of Jermaine Bass, JJ, the son, there is a very strong support for inclusion in the DNA mixture. In terms of Jayla Bass, there's a very strong support for inclusion in the DNA mixture. And so this stipulation is agreed upon and signed by both Mr. Bass, the defendant, his attorney, Ms. Schlemmer, and the state attorney, John Terry. And this will be back with you as a piece of evidence should you need further
Oh,
reference
thank
to it.
goodness, because I wouldn't remember any of that.
All right.
Thank you, Judge. If you could, we call Anna Cox.
Sure.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, ma'am.
I guess that was like.
And then the black background. That photo's gonna pop.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If you would please introduce yourself and spell your name for us.
My name is Anna Cox, and it's spelled A-N-N-A, and Cox is spelled C-O-X.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Ms. Cox, what do you do for a living?
I own my own private forensic consulting and training business.
And what does that entail? If you can explain that to the jury.
For the consulting part, I am contacted to either respond to active crime scenes to assist law enforcement agencies in processing and documenting the scene for bloodstain pattern analysis. I am also contacted for case file reviews by law enforcement attorneys or civil.
Can we just admire the bedazzling on the side of these glasses? Because I am peanut butter and jealous. Also, she does have the annoying lip smack sound, but I'm trying to focus on her sparkly glasses. Because seriously, really? If she lip smacks and the other lady talks, I'm afraid I'm gonna need an adult beverage.
Civil attorneys to provide a case file analysis regarding bloodstain pattern analysis if I am not requested to respond to the scene. For the training portion of my business, I provide bloodstain pattern analysis training throughout the state of Florida, as well as I have also taught in Illinois, providing agencies and attorneys with coursework on bloodstain pattern analysis.
What sort of prior education do you have?
For my brick and mortar education, I have a Bachelor of Science degree with my coursework in chemistry, biology, physics, their laboratory components, as well as calculus. I have a certificate in crime scene technology, which encompassed 10 courses for responding to crime scenes, such as photography, crime scene safety, fingerprint processing, chemical enhancement, etc. I have a certificate, graduate certificate in death investigation, and that included DNA serology, forensic anthropology, and forensic medicine 1, forensic medicine 2. I have a master's degree of forensic science with an emphasis in investigation. So that is also a field-based master's degree with additional coursework in photography, processing, chemical enhancement, crime scene investigation.
Somebody went to the body farm where they do all the bodies and they look at how they decompose. I think she went there. This woman is smart AF. I cannot wait to see her dismantle and destroy the defense. I'm so excited. I shouldn't be this excited to watch someone be humiliated, but I kind of want to fast forward through the state and go to the defense now. Don't let me down, Anna Cox.
Investigation. As far as professional practitioner coursework, I have over 450 hours of practitioner coursework, which includes crime scene reconstruction, bloodstain analysis, fingerprint processing, response to domestic incidents, etc. And I have since I would say 2013, I have actually taught over 1,000 hours of bloodstain pattern analysis and processing techniques.
How long have you been doing these type of analysis?
Well, I began my career as an autopsy technician, as a volunteer autopsy technician at the Hillsborough County Medical Examiners, and I began that in July of 2000. So my forensic career began back then. I was hired at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office as a forensic science specialist, which is just a fancy term for a crime scene investigator. And my primary responsibilities there were to respond to crime scenes, to document, identify, collect, preserve, and process evidence. However, about a year and a half into the beginning of my career at Pinellas, I was approached by my section manager, who recognized my science background and asked me if I wanted to go into bloodstain pattern analysis. So I actually began my bloodstain pattern analysis training, which is a specialized training, in 2001, and have been working and focusing on blood analysis since then.
All right. Have you ever testified as an expert on bloodstain analysis in court?
I have.
Approximately how many times and where?
I've testified in 11 counties in
No.
Florida. I've testified in federal court, civil court, as well as Terrebonne Parish in Louisiana. I've testified as an expert in blood analysis, I want to say approximately at least over 50 times.
Okay. Judge, at this time, I don't know if the defense has any questions.
No questions, all right.
Thank you. Now, explain to the jury, what is a bloodstain pattern analysis?
Bloodstain pattern analysis is a discipline of forensic science where...
Okay, I have a physics question. How do you do a lip smack when you have no lips? And I'm not trying to be hateful. It is actually just a real physics question. Like, how does this happen when one has no lips? Thanks, Dennis. Actually, again, my chesticles tried to, again, quiet me down. My boobs never want me to talk. They're like, when you talk, you get in trouble, and we get blamed. Pretty much.
We focus on identifying, defining, documenting, and analyzing bloodstains that are present at a particular crime scene in order to provide an interpretation of the events and the mechanisms that has caused their distribution. So another way to put it is I analyze the blood to try to figure out how the blood was deposited, and sometimes we can sequence when the blood was deposited as opposed to other bloodstains or patterns at the scene.
Did you prepare, in preparation for today, a PowerPoint to kind of describe to the jury what bloodstain pattern analysis means and how you do it?
I did.
All right. And would that assist you, you think, in explaining to the jury what your role and what
Just one day, and it doesn't have to be this year, though it would be really cool if it was this year. I want to see one of these bloodstained people do a Gallagher-like demonstration in a courtroom. Like, this is what happens when you do blunt force trauma. I'm just saying, it would be hilarious. Kind of like when prosecutors get to use the F word because someone said it, and you can tell which prosecutors really love cursing because they will add, you know, that particular phrase like, did you say F and this and that? You know, there's some that just enjoy cursing, you know, with permission in court. I would be one of those too.
you do in these kind of cases?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to put it on the screen here, Judge. This is going to be a court exhibit that we are placing up here.
All right, we'll just call it Court Exhibit 1 for the record.
Yes, Judge, that'd be great. Okay. Now, Ms. Cox, I'm going to have you just kind of go through this with me. Let me see if I can figure out how to get this on the slideshow. There it is
Ooh,
here. Okay.
professional.
So I'm going to have you kind of explain to me. So obviously this first page is just the your.
And she didn't even use Canva. Color me impressiolated. And no bubble letters. Although it does look like an accounting book from 1984.
Title for this definition. If you can go ahead and explain what this is here.
So when we do bloodstain pattern analysis, there are a lot of things that we have to consider. The first thing is what we consider is the physical characteristics of the bloodstains. And that is going to be your physics component of blood analysis. So that is going to be the size, the shape, and the distribution of the bloodstains at the scene. We also take a look at the number of bloodstains in order to determine is it a pattern, or is it a single deposition, or were there multiple depositions, multiple activities that have occurred in this particular area or location. We also have to look at the location and the surface itself that the bloodstains are on. And that is because different surfaces can have a different effect on the bloodstain pattern. For example, smooth surfaces obviously receive bloodstains differently than coarse or porous surfaces would. We also look at the relationship of the bloodstains to other evidence. And that is where my background as a crime scene investigator and the fact that I do still respond to active crime scenes comes into play, because I understand the following two variables that can also have an effect on blood distribution. That would be the scene-specific variables, how the room is set up, temperature, have there been any alterations. We also have to take a look at the history of the scene and the evidence to see how items were collected, their original locations, those types of things. So bloodstain pattern analysis encompasses analyzing not just the actual physical visual blood at the scene, but all of the other dynamics related to that particular scene.
So, and
I can't tell if I admire her or I think she's a Dexter. Allegedly, in my head canon, I'm just saying, she's very smart. I'm just kidding, you guys. This woman is incredibly personable. She is putting this at a level that is both easy to understand, but not condescending or degrading. I think she is explaining things wonderfully and really showing how much does go into this. I mean, so it is interesting to, you know, see how this expert is really, again, to see where the defense is really losing that, because there is a way to talk to a layperson that isn't condescending, smug, or just plain smugly.
I guess the next slide, so there is a scientific basis for this bloodstain pattern analysis, is that correct?
Yes, blood stain pattern analysis is entrenched in the natural sciences. Biology is an important component of blood stain pattern analysis. And as an analyst, one of the things I have to understand is how the body reacts to the infliction of an injury. So for example, an artery has a different purpose inside your body than your vein does. So I have to have a fundamental knowledge of that, as well as once the blood has left the human body, it can undergo decomposition due to environmental factors. So I have to take into consideration that when I view blood stains, they may not always be a bright, vibrant red, and that can be due to some of the conditions at the actual scene. The other component that was especially evident in this particular incident was the physics. And blood, we have two different types of activities that can cause a distribution of blood. One is the natural science or the natural laws of physics, and that would be the natural laws of gravity. For example, if you had cut your hand and you were standing over the sink and the blood was just allowed to drip down off your hand, that is what we consider to be a passive action. There's no real external force that's coming in to override the body's natural function of bleeding or the natural laws of physics of gravity. Another type of mechanism that does disrupt the natural laws of physics or does disrupt the natural function of the human body would be something called the introduction of a mechanism such as force. So that would be kicking, stomping, stabbing, beating, shootings, something where a force is actually introduced to the blood, causing it to be disrupted and distributed in a completely different manner than the natural laws of physics.
All right. So your next slide it talks about identifying blood stains and pattern. Are the following examples some ideas or some samples of some patterns that you use?
Yes, the following examples are examples of blood stains and patterns that were visible in this particular incident, but the ones for this particular slideshow are from training materials.
Okay, so the following slides we're about to see were not taken from this case at all, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I do like that she very clearly put that these are definitions from the American Academy of Forensic Scientists Standard Board. So she is making sure that she is using exemplars from an accredited and, highly educated sort of, group that follows this. What is it called? A professional group? Look, a committee, a flock of scientists. A gaggle.
All right, what is this slide show, or what is this slide demonstrating?
So this slide demonstrates what can occur when an outside force comes in and disrupts the natural laws of physics. The amount of force introduced to the blood stain, the more energy or the more force impacted onto the blood, the smaller the stains will be.
Thank you for coming
for
in.
example, this is something called blood spatter, and that is a blood stain resulting from an airborne drop created when the external force is introduced to the liquid blood. Now, these are what we call impact spatter patterns, and that is when an actual object is striking the liquid blood. The interesting thing, or the demonstrative thing about these two slides is if you look at the slide on the left, you see it kind of forms a conical formation, almost like a cone, where towards the bottom of the photograph, the stains are a little bit more dense. Some of them are circular in formation, and that is because the actual source of blood was in very close proximity to that area of that particular cardboard surface. As the blood source is further away and the blood is allowed to travel up in the conical formation, you'll actually see it becomes more sparsely distributed, and you'll actually start to see an elongation of your blood stains. And that becomes relative or important when I'm attempting to approximately determine the possible location of the blood source when it was impacted.
Okay. So what is directionality?
Directionality is the characteristic of a blood stain that would indicate the direction the blood was traveling or moving when it made contact with the surface. So at the time of its deposition on the surface, if it is elongated and has a tail that you see in this particular photograph, it tells me the direction the blood was actually moving. So the blood was traveling from left to right.
Okay.
And we call that our leading edge, and then the tail is what is actually pointing the direction the blood is moving.
Okay. And what are we looking at in this slide?
This is a flow pattern, and a flow pattern is, once again, this is another passive action. This is not the same as spatter. This is completely different. This is a blood stain that has resulted by the movement of a volume of blood on a surface due to gravity or the movement of the surface. So one of the distinguishing characteristics of the flow pattern is it appears to be almost linear, and it has delineated perimeter edges forming basically a passive, elongated stain traveling downward.
All right. What are we looking at in this particular slide?
This is also considered to be a passive action. This is something called satellite staining. And this is when a smaller blood stain is formed when the parent stain or the original blood stain actually makes contact with the surface. So what happens is, in the perfect example of this is if you watch a Florida thunderstorm. If you watch a Florida thunderstorm and you're looking at your driveway and you're watching the rain come down, you'll see it'll hit your driveway and smaller drops will actually bounce up and outward. That is exactly what satellite staining is. So this is different from impact spatter. This is the blood actually making contact with the surface, and either due to the rapid distribution of the blood or the surface itself or
Someone
both,
send
the
up
blood
the
bounces
flux
and breaks out
signal.
around it. And what you'll see a lot of the time as you
Thank
do
you
in
so
the
much,
slide on the
Celestial
right,
Force.
is you'll
Have a
see a
great
lot of little tiny
evening.
stains that surround what we call the larger parent stain, and it tends to be rather uniform in distribution, unlike what you saw with
Parent Stain. I don't know. I think that's a good band. Or maybe a book. My memoir. Parent Stains. Just, you're a parent and you have stains. I mean, no lies detected, really. God bless OxyClean.
the impact spatter.
And what is in this slide?
This is also a passive action. This is pooled blood and saturation. The actual mechanism is the same. A blood source is just allowed to bleed freely onto a surface. Pooled blood is a hard surface. Saturation is an absorbent surface. But once again, it is a passive action where bloodletting has occurred and the blood is just being deposited and following either the topography of the hard structure or the actual textile design.
And then in this slide, we're talking about transfer. What is that?
Transfer is also what we consider to be a passive action. It is a blood stain that results from contact from a pre-existing wet blood surface or item onto another surface. So once again, the bloodletting event has already occurred or is occurring, and an item is contaminated with the wet blood coming into contact with another surface, depositing the blood onto that secondary surface.
And you indicate on the slide, it looks like that some of these can be comparable and some are not.
Correct. So a transfer stain, you can get fingerprints, bloody shoe prints, bloody tire marks, bloody weapon impressions. Sometimes you have a transfer from an item and the characteristics are not distinguishable, but the mechanism and the action is still the same. It's just the wet surface coming into contact with a secondary surface.
This is a drip stain. What's that?
That's a blood stain that falls from a blood source due to gravity. So this would be the example of if you've cut your hand and you're rendering aid to yourself over the sink and blood is just dripping down. The two slides show the drastic difference between a smooth surface and a coarse surface. So the photograph on the left is basically blood drops on a smooth surface. They have a nice uniform perimeter. The other blood stain is on cardboard, which is a little bit more textured. So it broke the stain, but the actual deposition was still what we consider to be passive.
And finally, what is cast off?
Cast off is where a blood stain results from blood being released from an object due to its motion. That motion can be a swinging, a flinging, a strong push or movement of a bloodied item. And what happens is either the sudden movement forward or the sudden movement backward of the item will cause blood to be flung off. So, for example, if I had blood on my hand and I swung it, that would cause what we consider to be cast off.
And you're able to differentiate that from other types of blood stains?
Correct, yes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cox. So, Ms. Cox, were you in fact hired by the state of Florida in this case?
I was.
All right, and you were given some materials in order to give an opinion regarding the blood stains in this particular case. Is that correct?
Correct.
What materials were you given to analyze in this case regarding the death of Jermaine Bass?
I received multiple items. The items that I used for my analysis included body-worn camera footage, and I received multiple body-worn camera footages, so I watched them and I found 4 that provided me the information that I needed regarding the condition of the scene upon first responders' arrival. I also received photographs, including photographs of the scene and evidence collected from the scene, photographs taken at the hospital of both children.
Oh, I really like her because she did, she went through and looked at the body-worn cameras to see exactly how the scene looked when, they arrived. That's a really, really important point. So I think she's going to be very thorough, and I think the defense is going to wilt and die, I hope. I mean, figuratively, not literally, YouTube. Yeah, but she is definitely ready. She is an expert. She knows she's going into the lion's den next. And she has really, I like her presentation. I like her way of presenting things. Again, she talks to you like you are an intelligent human being. You're just not, into her specialty. So you don't know the technical, terms in there, but you are a functional human being that can understand words without crayons.
As well as the parents. I received autopsy photographs of Jermaine Bass, and I also received photographs of the clothing that had been collected from the children and from Mr. Bass. I received medical examiner reports and forms. I received the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office crime scene reports. I received the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office reports authored by the first responders and detectives. I received property and evidence lists, 911 phone call, a Florida Department of Law Enforcement biology report, and a pure gold forensic report as well. There were other items that I received that were not utilized in my analysis.
All right. And so what do you do when you start to make analysis? If you can kind of explain to the jury what your process is.
If I'm afforded the opportunity, the first thing that I like to do is I like to look at the body-worn camera footage, and that is because that is the scene as it was when the actual first responders arrived. So that would be even before the arrival of the crime scene unit, which is called after the scene has been secured and the scene is ready to be processed by the crime scene unit. So I like to look at the body-worn camera footage, and I watch that with the sound off. So I'm just interested in watching the movements of the first responders, the movements of anybody in the scene, the location of people in the scene, the location of blood evidence in relationship to the people at the scene. It also provides me the opportunity, especially if the individuals who were injured at the scene are not present at the scene when the crime scene unit responds, it allows me to see the condition of those individuals prior to the transport. So I like to look at that first. And as I'm going through, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the crime, at the blood evidence. I'm starting to apply the definition to them based on their characteristics. And then I like to look at the crime scene photographs because they're more deliberate. They provide me overall mid-range close-up documentation of the evidence. It also gives me a clearer picture of the location of the evidence in relationship to other evidence or other items at the scene. The next thing I like to do is I will continue to watch the body cam video. I will also continue to look at the photos, but now I'll look at what I consider to be the technical reports first. So I'll look at the technical reports, which included the autopsy report, because that is going to be my medical report regarding Jermaine Bass. Then I will go and I will read the crime scene technician reports, because those are also technical reports. That provides me information that I may not be able to see in crime scene photographs. So it provides me, also provides me information of the condition of items that were collected, whether areas were tested to determine whether or not it was possibly blood, what items, what are they going to be categorized under in property and evidence lists. So I like to read those reports. And then I'll read the property and evidence lists, I'll listen to the 911 call, and then I'll proceed to read through the first responder reports to see if they include any technical information related to the physical evidence that may be pertinent to my analysis and review.
All right. So, for instance, in this case, you mentioned body-worn cameras. I'm just going to use this as an example. Did you receive the body-worn camera of Deputy Nathaniel Jones showing him
Holy
taking
close-up, we don't
child,
need
Jermaine Bass,
that.
off from her position and putting her on the ground?
I did.
Okay. So, as a result of that, you were able to see the positioning of Miss Jermaine Bass when she was first observed, correct?
Correct.
And did that help you in your analysis?
Very much.
Okay. Now, prior to trial, you and I have spoken, correct?
Correct.
All right. And were you asked to provide a grouping of photographs that would help you and assist you in explaining to the jury your findings in this case?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure it's already been admitted into evidence that states exhibits 24A through LL. Do these appear to be the photographs that you wanted to use in your trial?
Well, okay, I will say that this is at 1.25 speed. So he is blinking a lot, but he's not blinking as fast. That is a question. I'm guessing hell nah. But, you know, maybe when she's in Canton, she'll get Cantonese and, you know, or Cantonitis. Cantonitis is better, yes. She'll get Cantonitis and then she'll think solo cups are great. And she'll want to drink and drive everywhere because apparently you cannot be sober and drive in Canton, at least from what I've understood from that daggone trial.
Can I remove this?
He's like, I should update my LinkedIn profile to working on textiles or transportation awareness. She has a heck ton of photographs. Sir, you is going down.
Yes, those are the photographs that I selected.
And you use these for...
Anna of the great sparkly glasses that I will be getting the next time I can get new glasses. Don't let me down. Look, I'm not saying I'm aiming for you to make the defense lawyer cry, but I'm not saying that, you know, it would warm my heart and melt my cold soul. So, you know, help a sister out. My heart needs to grow like the Grinch, so make her cry.
Particular photographs that are in State's exhibit that's already been admitted in evidence 24A through LL. These are the photographs you used in putting together a PowerPoint to assist you in presenting this evidence to the jury, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And do you believe that that PowerPoint would aid you in describing to the jury your findings in this case?
Yes.
And Judge, I am now going to be going back to the court exhibit and showing the second PowerPoint presentation contained on the thumb drive.
All right.
All right, so I'm going to just go through the slides and have you explain the significance of each of these slides to the jury as far as your findings in this particular case. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so explain this first slide, if you could, for the jury.
So one of the first conclusions that I came to was, one of the first things that I attempted to do with my blood analysis was to identify the location of Jayla Bass and Jermaine Bass when the actual gunshot wounds occurred. So what I'm looking for is going to be impact spatter. So that would be the spatter that takes on the conical nature, and that is going to be from the actual gunshot wounds themselves. So when I review all the bloodstains and patterns, the only area that I identified where there was impact spatter that would be consistent with receiving the gunshot wounds is the northwest corner of the top bunk bed. And so what I did, now there's multiple photographs from multiple angles of that particular area. So I used all of the photographs that were provided to me, but these are the ones that best allow me to describe my findings. So the first thing that I looked at the top left corner, which is the SLB_105 photograph. That is what would be considered to be a mid-range photograph of the west end of the bed, including the northwest corner. So the northwest corner is going to be that corner of the bed that the pillow is not in. So what I identified in that particular area is on the railing that faces inward toward the mattress, the west side, which would be the short side that the pillow's up against, that has impact spatter on it. The other area that was of interest was the actual corner where the two railings meet. That has impact spatter on it as well. Then you also have a little bit of impact spatter on the long railing at the corner, but you have the conical impact spatter that actually radiates upward from that corner, upward in that conical fashion onto the wall above the bed. So that indicated to me that understanding the location of the gunshot wounds, that there were 3 to the head of Jayla and 1 to the head of Jermaine and 1 to the hand of Jermaine, that the
Can we just do this? Can we skip the whole jury thing? I'm kind of done with this.
Oh!
I mean, I'm just saying maybe we can save some taxpayer money allegedly in Minecraft. But unless the ghost of Alec Baldwin, infected this gun, there is no way that it, discharged 5 times. And I swear to all that is, and his hand was injured. JJ's hand was injured, so that's how he got his DNA on the force multiplier. Because it probably, he was holding it to try to keep it away from him. I swear to all that is... Okay, we're going to go ahead with this because I need to see the defense attorney cry. Gonna need to get an incense burner.
Those areas of their person, their heads, and his hand needed to be in that corner. And they also have to be relatively either on the mattress or on the pillow and on the mattress in order for the blood to have the target of the bed frame as well as the wall to have received the blood spatter. So that tells me that their heads are low, either immediately on or just right above the mattress.
Okay, and the area that's circled on the bottom photograph, there's a green marker in there, and you're familiar with crime scene investigations and stuff. Were you familiar with the fact, or did you know that that was an area that was swabbed for DNA?
Yes, that's a very traditional form of crime scene documentation. You do your overall photographs first, document the scene as it was upon your arrival, and then as a crime scene investigator, we are trained to let the scene tell us what needs to be documented with scales and what warrants more and more detailed documentation. Very traditional crime scene documentation. I understood exactly what those scales meant. They used 2 different colors, very traditional way of distinguishing between 2 types of evidence. I understood that the green scale was for the impact spatter that was on the wall, and the yellow scale was for the defect to the bed frame. Absolutely understood that.
All right, and what was the results of the DNA on that bloodstained spatter on area P?
That resulted in a mixture of both children.
Okay, and so is it your opinion, Ms. Cox, that both the individuals both received their injuries on this corner of the bed?
Yes.
Okay. And so it's your opinion then that their heads were both close together to that side in that area of the bed?
When each of them received the gunshot wounds, their heads and possibly Jermaine Bass's hand were in that corner.
Is there anything else from these slides that you feel like you need to talk about, or can we go to the next slide?
I mean, go to the next slide.
Okay. All right, and what are we looking at in this slide, second slide?
So this is just what would be considered a close-up photograph, and this is a photograph facing the actual north wall. So the corner's kind of off to the left-hand side. You can see the saturated pillow, but you can see how the blood stains radiate upward, not only from on the frame, but also up onto the wall. The next area that was of interest to me was what allowed me to place the incident occurring in the northwest corner was once the pillow was removed from the bed frame, there is a distinct stop to the impact spatter on the west side of the frame. Blood follows the laws of physics. So blood is going to travel and attach itself to something until it either can no longer do so or it's already attached itself to something. So the fact that the blood on the west frame abruptly stopped indicated to me that that pillow was most likely in that location when the actual gunshots occurred. So that is just me being able to apply the other evidence in order to allow me to be a little bit more defined with my conclusions. And that is also, that was done sequentially, which is a very traditional type of crime scene documentation. You photograph things, then you move things, then you re-photograph things.
And let me ask you that, Ms. Cox, while we're on the subject of that, because you talk about a lot that you've done this before. You've been a crime scene investigator. You go out, you know how they're done. Do you swab every single piece of blood that you see anywhere at every crime scene?
No, it's very customary to take representative swabbings.
Okay, and when you take representative swabbings, do you look for areas that you believe are relevant based on the bloodstain pattern and things of that sort?
Yes, your amount of training, both professional training, practitioner training, brick and mortar training, as well as your training and just responding to crime scenes on a daily basis, that is why one of the reasons is we have to consider all of the scene-specific variables, because the scene will tell you and help guide you to allow you to collect the evidence that may be probative in a future investigation.
Okay. So it's very common to have a crime scene with Bloodstains all scattered throughout, but you would only swab specific areas that you believed were pertinent.
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Okay. So in an area with numerous blood stains throughout, so you would not scrub all of, or swab all of them, you would pick certain ones?
Correct.
Okay,
And I still do.
okay. What are we looking at? in
And
this slide
take
here?
that, defense.
This is, as soon as you enter the south bedroom, the children's bedroom, as soon as you look over to where the bunk beds are, this is, you can see like it's either a dollhouse or a makeshift kitchen toy that's up against the west side of the bed. So you can see the top bunk is higher than the actual toy that is sitting on the floor, even though it is a rather large toy. What is of interest to this is now the stains and patterns that I'm analyzing are not by force. The stains and patterns that I have conclusions on from hereafter are what are all considered to be passive. So I've already identified the area where the gunshot wounds occurred. Now I'm identifying what is happening after the bloodletting events have occurred. What this particular photograph and then the photograph, well, actually what both of these photographs show me is that not only do I have saturation to the top of the mattress in the corner. Once again, this is in the northwest corner. The saturation is such that the textile itself is starting to have it overflow onto the west edge of the mattress. So what's happening is the blood is continuing to be deposited in this area from the gunshot injuries, and the blood is actually coming up over and cascading down the side of the mattress, and it actually cascades all the way down to where it starts to drip on the slats of the bed below. It also continues to do that on the north side of the mattress on the other side. So what that tells me is that the bleeding that is occurring after the gunshot injuries is being confined to that particular area as the bloodletting injuries are being allowed to flow freely and flowing down over the mattress and onto the wall and the bed below.
Okay, and you mentioned something a minute ago that brought up a point that I hadn't asked you yet. That area that you described in the first slide, where you said this is where they were shot, that was blood spatter that you said was from a bloodletting event, right? That's how you describe it?
Correct.
Okay. That was the only place in all of these areas that you were able to analyze that you found that occurred, correct?
Correct.
All right, did you find anywhere else where there could have been potentially a gunshot?
There was no other impact spatter other than the northwest corner.
All right, thank you. All right, what are, in this slide here, with SLB 348 and SLB 347, what are we looking at in these pictures?
This is, once again, further on in the documentation process. You can see that the toy that was originally up against the west end of the bed has been moved, and they're just taking additional photographs. So it's a sequential processing technique that's very common. And what you're seeing in the first photograph, which is indicator 348, you have almost a straight-on view of the top bunk, and you actually can see the flow patterns that are coming over the top of the bunk and down the west side of the bunk bed. The photograph that's identified as 347 is an actual photograph looking down at an angle towards the bottom bunk area. You can see that the bottom bunk, the bed, the actual mattress itself did not fit the frame. So you can actually see that there is a rather significant area where there is no mattress. So the slats of the bed frame are actually exposed, and you can just now start to see that the blood has been dripping down, and it's actually dripping down and hitting the slats and bouncing out. And that's your satellite staining, like your rainstorm. So that's what's occurring there. So once again, that is indicating to me that the blood source is in the northwest corner and is bleeding uninterrupted as the blood is flowing downward.
In our next slide, what do we see here?
So this became even more evident. Now we're looking at the north side of the mattress that was originally in contact with the frame against the wall. So this is once again further on in the documentation process where they have taken a downward photograph to identify the location of not only the dowel rod, but also the relationship of it to the mattress. What's of interest to me is I'm starting to see what's called coagulation, which is where the blood is actually starting to become gelatinous and coagulate and start to adhere to itself, and it's forming almost like an outline. And the second slide was demonstrated to me what I had already started to believe was that is where Jermaine Bass's head was laying. And that was confirmed when I kept reviewing the body cam video. I was able to see in the body cam video the proximity of her head, and that is where her face and her head was lying while the blood was starting to coagulate around her and then drip down the north side of the mattress, and then it began to drip down the wall, the north wall.
And is this just more of a close-up shot of what you were just describing?
That's a close-up shot, which gives you more of an indication of not only can you see the blood that's coming down on the north side and the coagulation, but you can also see another saturation stain just above it, and you can see where that's going down the west side. So you basically have two areas where the blood is actually coming over down the side of the actual mattress.
Okay. What do we see in this particular slide here?
You know what? Lord Chippy would get sick with you, so I'm afraid you're going to have to go to Mars. With or without a suit, I really don't care.
So at this point, this is documentation of the wall and the bottom bunk. So this is the area underneath the top bunk. Once again, what was significant to me is if you look at where the flow pattern is on the wall and the satellite staining on the wall, as well as the pooled blood on the wooden slats and all that, that is all also in the northwest corner, which is at this point now everything that is related to this particular, the impact spatter and then the individuals laying on the mattress and bleeding downward is all in the northwest corner. And that is just solidified when you look at the relationship of the downward flow pattern on the wall as well as the satellite staining.
So for instance, in SLB 304, the middle picture towards the bottom, I'm going to move my cursor. Here's the cursor here. There's these along the top up here. What is that along the top ledge of the bunk bed?
That is actual blood that has dripped off the mattress onto the frame and dripping down onto the frame below.
Okay, and then on SLB 120, this area here, that is not spatter, you're saying?
Correct. That is not impact spatter. The reason I was able to distinguish between that and I was able to identify that as satellite staining was because of the scene-specific variables of this particular case. So I was able to take into consideration the saturation stain above to the mattress above, the flow pattern on the wall that travels down the wall, the flow patterns on the mattress. There's additional photographs where these items have been removed and you can actually see where the blood is starting to pool on the bottom frame, on the wooden slats, and on the floor below because it's just being allowed to drip down. So that is a perfect example of I need to have an understanding of the scene-specific variables and dynamics here. There was another thing that was important for me to consider, which was there's a towel and a stuffed animal that is laying on top of the slats. Well, the towel is also receiving blood. Now, because that's a porous surface, it's going to interact a little differently when it receives the blood than the hard frame is. So that's why some of the stains look a little distorted or, a non-technical term, a little wonky, is because that is a very specific scene variable that did have an effect on how some of those blood stains were distributed. So that's an example of the history and variables of the scene coming into play in analysis.
Okay, and you have a yellow arrow that indicates an area R. What is the area R? Is it that green, and I'll move the cursor to the, is it that green sticker that's on the lower part of this picture, closest to the towel in the blood pattern?
Yes, so the stickers identified, they were green, so that identified the blood, that was a blood substance. And also that was confirmed in the report that I read from the technician who documented this scene. And then when I went and looked at the DNA report, knowing that that area had been tested, that was also an area that was a mixture of both children.
Okay, so what does that tell you, the fact that both Jermaine and Jayla's DNA is in that blood stain down there?
That would indicate that they were both actively bleeding in the northwest corner of the top bunk while the blood was deposited over the sides of the mattress and down onto the bottom bunk.
Okay, so to be clear, the blood that's dripping down is a combination of both of the children.
That's what the DNA results indicated to me.
And I guess what do we have? These are closer up views of those?
Correct. So in slide 305, the first slide on the left, you can actually see the flow pattern. It's a very delineated downward flow pattern. It's got the delineated perimeter lines, and it's just the blood following the laws of physics, going down the wall based on gravity. The secondary photograph, identified as 307, that shows you not only do I have different surfaces, so I have a hard, like painted wood frame, which is a little bit smoother. I have the towel, which is an absorbent surface, which is going to react differently to the blood. Then I have the wooden slats that are part of the frame for the mattress that aren't necessarily as smooth as the actual grave frame. So those are three different surfaces that I have to take into consideration, and that explained to me why I have such a variety of the satellite stains and why some of them are in different locations than others. Because, and not only that, I have different levels. So the gray wooden frame is higher than the wooden slat frames, and then you have the towel, which is higher than the wooden frame, but then drooping down between the frames. So those are all variables that I have to consider.
All right. And the blood on the slats, would that blood have come all the way through the mattress, or would it have been still from the ones that were coming over the side?
It would be the ones coming over the side, and I actually considered that. And so what I did was I looked at the photographs where the mattress had been cut and one of the projectiles removed, because that is something that I had to consider, and so I was able to exclude that.
Okay, so it just came from the side and then just dripped down to there?
Correct.
All right. And what do we see in this one, in this particular photo?
This is a photograph which is demonstrating the distance from the wall to the mattress that did not fit the frame. And it's also just giving a downward perspective of the stains and patterns in relationship to each other, showing the different elevations as well as the different locations of the blood on the different areas.
And again, this area towards the left of the picture, where the cursor is right now, that is satellite staining. That is not from a shot or anything like that.
Correct, that is not impact spatter.
So what is this slide demonstrating here?
So on this slide, the sketch at the bottom is mine. I am a very visual person. It's easier for me to put words into a picture. And so what I did was I made my own computer aid sketch to allow me to articulate my findings a little bit more clearly. So what I did was I took not only the photographs and the body-worn camera information, but I also took the information from the DNA reports regarding the blood evidence, and I put together that sketch. And what that sketch allowed me to do was to confirm what I had already spoken about earlier, which was the gunshot injuries occurred in the northwest corner, and then both children are laying in the northwest corner, and that is reflected, as you can see on the sketch. You can see the overall, all of the evidence together. So you can see P is the impact spatter on the top bunk, and R is the satellite staining on the bottom bunk, and they are both in the northwest corner. And those are the two areas that are the mixture.
Okay. And did you consider N, M, and L as far as your analysis? Those, because each of those came back to Jermaine Bass, the son, correct, JJ?
As did O.
As did O.
Yes.
Okay. And what are we looking at here?
So this is a Star Wars blanket, and it's actually not a blanket. It's more of a comforter, but it's rather large. It was documented back at the crime scene section with actual dimensions being measured. So it's actually a little bit of a larger comforter. Then there's also like a fuzzy Super Batman blanket that's also kind of rolled up within that. So when we have a bloodstain case that I'm analyzing, I need to be respectful of all the bloodstains and patterns that are present at the scene, even if they may not be directly related to the bloodletting incident while it's occurring. In this instance, the gunshot wounds. There's a bunch of transfer stains that are at the end of the bed, on the opposite end of the bed. So when I'm looking at these, the Star Wars comforter and this Batman blanket, one of the things that initially that I observed was there are blood stains on this comforter where there's no blood source for them to have received it. So for example, in the second photograph, photograph 376, you can see that there's blood on the corners or portions of the comforter that is facing upward in the air, where there's no blood in the air providing deposition of blood on those areas of the comforter. That tells me that that comforter received those blood stains prior to coming to rest in that location. That's the first hypothesis that I come to, because I follow the scientific methodology. So that's the first thing that I'm notating is this comforter has blood on it in areas that's not in contact with the blood area. The other thing I noticed was there appears to be some blood stains and patterns possibly under the comforter. So now I need to determine whether or not the blood on the comforter came from the blood on the bed at the opposite end, or is this comforter getting its blood staining at the northwest end of the bed and then being moved to that end. Body cam When Jayla Bass is first observed, you can see a portion of the blanket on her legs, and it's actually pushed off of her by the first responder. That is actually also notated in a report that I read. One of the reasons I read their reports as well. So those were things I considered. As the processing continued, those blankets and comforters are removed, and there are, in fact, transfer stains underneath them. They don't have the amount of blood volume that has caused the saturation that I observed to these items, which indicated to me is most consistent that that blanket received blood at the northwest end of the bed prior to being moved to the northeast or the east end of the bed.
Okay. And what are we looking at in this slide?
This is the area underneath the where the comforter and the blankets were. And you can also see that there are transfers on the wall and on the bed frame. And that is indicative of that comforter was contaminated with enough wet blood that it caused the transfer stains and small saturation stains that end of the bed. So that is how I formulated a hypothesis and then came to the conclusion that it's most consistent with those items being further west on the bed prior to coming to rest there.
All right. And then SLB 004, this is just the blanket laid out?
This is the blanket that was actually laid out, and there are yellow defect circles that encased some areas of on the blanket. So I was originally interested in how much saturation or how much blood was in fact on these blankets to determine if I could just take it one step further to confirm my findings that the blanket was the most consistent cause of the transfer stains down the east end. But then something else caught my eye, and so I requested testing on this item.
All right. And so what we're talking about here in SLB 19 and 21.
Yes, so I'm looking at the blood on the item that was documented back at their crime lab in their controlled environment. And, you know, you have some defects to the blanket and there's no blood around them. What was interesting to me on this particular area of the blanket, I have a saturation stain and it's encased as number 6 with a defect. One of the things I do, I request photographs be given to me on a digital medium so that I can look at them close up. I can zoom in, I can focus on certain areas if I need to. And as I was looking at area 5 and 6, what was really interesting to me was area 6 was a defect, and right next to it was an area of dark saturation that had a foreign substance mixed in with it. And I thought that looked a lot like possible biological tissue. So I requested that the blood from area 6, that general area, be tested to determine whose it possibly could be.
And was it in fact tested?
It was.
And were you given the results?
I was.
And whose blood was it?
Jermaine Bass's.
The Junior, the son?
The son.
Yes, it's confusing sometimes because they're both named Jermaine, so I sometimes have to clear that up.
Okay, yes.
So this is what you're talking about when you talk about being able to zoom in? These are more zoomed?
Correct.
Zoomed in photos?
Yes, so you can see that in right adjacent to the defect that has saturation not only around it, but inside the fibers of the hole, you can see the possible biological material that is right next to it.
Is that in number 5?
Correct.
All right. And what does that tell you, or what does that help you form as an opinion with regards to that piece of evidence?
That defect, a projectile, was in close enough proximity to possible biological material when those were deposited.
Okay. Now, you can't say specifically what biological material.
No.
Okay, so it could be from his hand, that his hand was shot?
Correct. He did have a gaping wound to hit his right palm area by his pinky. Yes.
Or possibly his head?
Or possibly his head. His head was bandaged in all the documentation that I saw.
Okay. But it's your opinion, though, that the substance in number 5 is some sort of biological material?
I believe it is consistent with that, with the experiences that I've had and the numerous amounts of bloodshedding events that I've worked.
Okay. Now, what are we looking at in this particular slide that talks about the movement of Jermaine Bass?
So because I was able to see how Jayla Bass was removed from the bed, there was additional documentation of additional bloodstains and patterns on the mattress that I could not necessarily attribute to her. So not seeing Jermaine Bass, the son, until the first place I observed him was on body cam, sitting on the adult Jermaine Bass's lap. So what I observed was that there are transfer stains that are along the south rail of the bed. So this is the side of the railing that is opposite the side of the wall. And there's a bunch of transfer stains over in that area as well. And what was interesting is in the second slide, 473, the transfer stains continue over towards the ladder and then they continue down the ladder. So you also have stains on the ladder itself. So that being consistent with possibly the son being removed from the bed, moving himself or being moved from the bed and down the railing. Now, I do want to make it clear that another person contaminated with the son's blood could have also deposited those blood stains while moving him. I can't exclude either one, so both of those are included.
Okay. And you determined that it was Jermaine Bass that was moved because obviously Jayla was still found where she was, but also based on the DNA results of O and the ones along the along the ladder. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And what are we looking at in these particular pictures, 267, 268, and 266?
Those are actual cast-off stains.
Okay, and what does that mean?
That is where an item that is contaminated with blood is swung or moved, and the blood is being swung or flung off that item due to its movement. Not at all surprised to see those, knowing that both children had bleeding injuries and had been removed from the bedroom. And so those cast-off stains were exactly where I would have anticipated they might have been. So there was nothing that I found inconsistent with the activity of removing them from the room.
Okay, so it'd be consistent, say they had them in the arms and they moved it around like this and some of the blood does maybe start to drip, just kind of gets...
Okay, so something is percolating in my mind. And he seems to have more, they aren't very, he has a very flat affect, but he seems to be more upset when they talk about his son. So I am wondering if he thinks or possibly had a worry that Jayla wasn't his. You know, it seems like he was very controlling, probably accusing Shirley of cheating and things like that. So it does make me kind of wonder. Give me 1 second, you guys. Actually, you guys, I am going to have to cut this short. I've got a kiddo coughing and I'm going to make sure that he's okay and get everyone to bed. So I am sorry for the abrupt stop, but I do want to go make sure they're okay. Lord, please save me from the creeping crud, not another one. But 'tis the life of a mom, and this particular cold season is just brutal. Thank you guys for understanding. I'm going to send you guys somewhere fun. Let me find somewhere. And doggone it, I really wanted to see her cry. All right, it looks like, well, Lawyer You Know is doing something with Karen Reed, so I am going to send you guys there. If you're not read it out, I will see you guys in the morning for Mornings with Mo, and then we will continue to try to, you know, catch up as we can. You know, the Petty Express runs when it can because real life comes first, and it's crazy out there. Anywho, thank you guys so much. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, but carry a can of bitch fire because kindness doesn't equal doormat. I'll see you guys in the morning. Bye.